Good morning, Kara and Seth, and everyone who's watching. My name is Dominique Chabot, and I am the Family Support Manager with Autism Canada. I am happy to be here this morning to speak with our subject matter experts, Kara Dymond, who is um, a repeat in these series with Autism Canada for almost, 3 years, give or
But
take?
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And Seth Leroux, who is our inclusion and accessibility program lead with Autism Canada. And today we're going to talk about back to school. And these are speaker series that we've had going on for a few years. And what I'm really enjoying about these series is that we are not covering that same age group on a regular basis, and the topics vary. And all of these questions are essentially coming from our audience who do watch our speaker series and have questions that maybe we hadn't covered in the past. But a lot of them are also coming through our family support, which are caregivers, individuals who are looking for advice or support, especially in that month of, August, where they're preparing their child of, any age to go back to school, even for that post-secondary chapter in their life. So the ages do vary. And also, come IEP time in October, the do's and don'ts, and what is the best way to navigate that beginning of the year, right before school starts, right up until kind of October, where all of these transitions are happening and these changes are happening for our kids. And the questions just keep coming in. And as our team, with our family support team, they do their best to answer all of these questions and provide resources to help parents and caregivers navigate these new chapters. We always feel that we are able to answer a lot of these questions through our speaker series. So today, Kara, Seth, and I are going to go over your questions and provide as much information and tools and tips and tricks as possible to help the caregivers support their kids in this very difficult and overwhelming time of year. So, Kara, thank you for being here again today. Take the stage, introduce yourself. I'd like to hear more about your recent publications and what you're doing with your time.
Yeah, so I'm Cara Diamond, as you know, and my second book just came out. It's called, do I have a copy here? I think I do.
Oh, yes.
Not prepared for this. How do I get it out of the box? Destroy my office, you know. This is it, creating a neurodiversity affirming classroom.
Oh, that's
Uh,
fantastic. Congratulations.
yeah, and it really is it has insights for any age group. I would say anyone reading it is going to learn a little bit about their own brain and think about their processing and communication needs. So, yes, so I'm a working classroom educator. I work with autistic children. I also am a teacher educator, and I teach classes on neurodiversity and accessible education at the University of Toronto. What else? I think that's the main reason I'm here.
Do you want to just kind of, talk a little bit about your website and the tools that the caregivers can kind of, they can find, just whether it's for inspiration or whether it's for, even teachers can kind of
Yeah,
peruse your
I
website and find a lot there too.
my website is my name, caradymond.com, and that's Diamond spelled weirdly, Dymond, Cara with a K. And I do have resources both for teachers and for parents for free on my website and blog posts and things from how to talk to your child about their diagnosis to how to create like a sensory kit for the family and find calm together as a family and lots of things for homework time and
Mhm.
uh, how to teach about self-regulation and what actually happens in our brains when we are distressed. So there's all sorts of things there.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much for your continued support and advocacy. And oh my gosh, I can't wait to I learn from you on a yearly basis at this point because we have been colleagues through the ambassador program, and just we reach out to you when we we need some expert advice. So
Mhm.
we really appreciate you and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Hi, Seth.
Hi,
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm great, thank you. Seth, I would like for you to take the floor and tell us a little bit about you.
All right, so my name is Seth. I have two neurodivergent children, and I'm neurodivergent myself. I think one thing that I like to mention right off the hop is that I am transgender, which means I bring a unique perspective to my autism as a late in life diagnosed person who presented with what we can now see as more stereotypical female-bodied autism throughout childhood, which was not recognized as autism throughout my childhood. I think that gives me an interesting perspective, as well as now presenting masculine and living as an autistic person, but also having autistic and other diagnoses, neurodivergent children as well. Um, so that's what I bring to the table.
Oh, well, we're happy to have you here. Thank you. And welcome to the Autism Canada team. You've been here almost a month now. Was
Wow.
I think we just hit the month mark.
Yay! Thank you. I'm really, really excited to have you join these conversations and to get some insight from you in the future. And I think I need to um, say that I am neurotypical. I am not on a spectrum, but I do have a neurospicy family. I have a neurodivergent husband, and I have two autistic children, and they're actually neurodivergent. They have several diagnoses, and I am actually doing this out of selfish reasons or for selfish reasons. I had just mentioned to Kara and to Seth that I am going through some changes with my children as well. I've got one who is no longer in the school system, and then I have one who is in that grade eight, um, you know, part of the school, chapter, if you will. And then so he's transitioning over to that high school piece. And my, it's a change for all of us, I think, as a family as well. And we're going to talk about that in some of our questions that were sent to us. But I'm going to benefit from this absolutely 100%. So we're going to get started. Let's go with question number one. How can caregivers help their child adjust to new schedules, more classrooms, and changing teachers during this transition? Oh my gosh. Um, and again, we're talking about this age category. So, Kara, I don't know if you want to elaborate on how this question kind of affects, or not necessarily affects, but um, is applied in this context. Like, if you
Mhm.
want to maybe talk a little bit about that age demographic that we really wanted to focus on for this particular series.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is I have to take my own advice here because it is a good idea at the end of August or whenever your school starts, the week before, even earlier than that, to begin adjusting the bedtime if it has shifted. I am still staying up far too late. I have a week to get ready to
Yeah.
go back. So,
Yeah.
creating, getting back into those routines preemptively before school starts is really helpful. So, whether that's laying out clothes the night before, going to bed on time, making a packed lunch, some of those steps, reminding them what the steps are. Uh, if it's possible, visiting schools is really helpful for our students to meet the teachers if they are in. So connecting with the principal to see what is possible. And if not, even doing a drive-by of the school or going and spending some time if it's a school that has an outdoor section, like spending some time around the school. And I always like to advocate for having your child write a letter or prepare like a self-advocacy document. There are a couple of templates on my website that they can give to their teacher in that first week of school. uh, a way of introducing themselves, their strengths, their preferences, topics they love to learn about, and also some of the things that might feel harder for them at school and strategies that they have learned so far to be effective. That can be a really helpful tool to start the year off strong. Seth, what do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so specifically for me, so I did this grade 8 to high school transition with my oldest son, who's 17 right now, going into grade 12 this year. So that'll be a new transition next year
Mhm.
again. Um, but one of the things that I found being able to put myself into my past shoes. Okay, these are the things that I struggled with. I'm seeing my kids struggle with them. How can I adjust for them the way how I would have wanted things accommodated for me? And so a big thing about adjusting the schedules for me and new classrooms and even changing teachers was knowing what to expect.
Mhm.
Going in, even having a conversation, like the bare minimum, I think, is having that conversation with your kids about these are the times, really explaining to them if they have devices, have them set maybe even just to vibrate. A 5 minute heads up, transition is coming up. You're going to be switching classrooms. But if you can get your kids into the school so that they can,
Mhm.
here is the very first class you're going to be in. This is likely where you're going to sit, or you'll get to choose your own seat. Be warned of that. All of
Mhm.
those tiny little pieces um, that I find cause me, myself, as an autistic person and my children, in my experience, to feel overwhelmed and dysregulated. It's the unknown and the lack of understanding what the expectations are socially and even like schedule wise. So
Yeah.
I think that what's really important is like make those meetings with the teachers. Take the kids into the school, show them this is the path through the hallway you're going to have to walk. Here's where the washrooms are. You're
Yeah.
likely going to sit here in this classroom. Transition times will be at this time. Set reminders to vibrate so you're not, disrupting the class on their devices that we all know they're going to have with them, whether they're supposed to or not. And practice those transitions. And if you know that your child struggles with transitions, working on that at home in general, what works at home, applying it. So if at home a 5 minute warning is what your child needs, find a way to implement that at school too.
Mhm. I just had a couple of other thoughts. Seth, you sparked some things, which is great. Uh, if your child is moving on to a school that is more like a high school or middle school that has lockers, things like that, that maybe they've never had to deal with before, get the lock earlier, practice opening it. That can be like I have fine motor difficulties. Locks were always really hard for me, but practice really helped. And getting around the school, going to different classes, even making a map together. If you can find out the classrooms, if you can get into the school and actually physically walk it and then make a map together, that can help with like the working memory challenges that come from trying to keep all of this new information in mind. And most principals will hopefully allow that to happen, the preschool visit. And even just reminding your child that everyone is overwhelmed in a new transition. It is not just them, because one of the hardest things is feeling like you're the only person who is struggling or feeling challenged. And there is some comfort in knowing that, we're all starting out anew together, and this is going to be new for everyone. So it's expected we will all be a little bit lost and a little bit confused, and we can ask people for help.
Very good. And I think one something that came to mind while I'm listening to the two of you speak, especially, when it comes to whether it's visual supports or, being able to visit the school ahead of time, knowing where their locker is, knowing where the washrooms are closest to their classrooms, all of that is so important. But it oftentimes, caregivers will probably say, well, he or she is older now, or they're older now. They don't need all of this preparation. And that is false. If anything, this is a time of year where all kids, neurotypical, neurodivergence, all kids get, overwhelmed and anxious. And sometimes just having that conversation, those reminders at any age is really key. It's important. Not only will it help alleviate some of those extra stressors, but
Mhm.
it does help them, help prepare. And if it's visual supports that you need to provide your child to, help prepare for school, or PowerPoint presentations, whatever that may look like, then continue to do that. Don't stop just because you are assuming competency. It's great to assume competency, but it's also important to remind yourself as a caregiver that, okay, he's older now, he gets it. And I'm thinking of my own, and he struggled, and I was trying to see how independent he could be, and self-preparedness, and trying to get his routine back into, and of course he needed those prompts. And so I've come to realize the hard way that just because he's older doesn't necessarily mean that he is ready for these changes. It's still very overwhelming. So
Yeah. I'm
thank
Can I
you.
40
just
and I still need, a how-to manual for everything. I need people to walk
Yep.
me through and talk me through things.
Yep, absolutely. Seth?
Well, I was just gonna say that a good way to test the independence and promote the independence, though I think that a lot of parents still want to see their child have, like for me, if someone was still implementing those resources, those visual supports, you would see my independence flourish in ways that are not maybe what you're immediately thinking. So yes,
Mhm.
I'm not managing the how to get from point A to point B by myself. But what you're doing is A, continuing to bridge that gap between parents and children as they get older by
Mhm.
providing that you're not making them feel shut down about where they should be or what they should or shouldn't need.
Yeah.
But also, like, I feel like you're going to see your child step up in their advocacy of themselves
Hmm.
because you're still promoting to them it's okay to need these things.
Yeah.
Hmm.
When you take that away, I think, and are coming at it from a place of really good intention and wanting to
Yeah.
see the independence, that might not be how your child is processing it, and it might induce masking. Uh,
Yes.
Whereas if you're still providing those things, you're providing the support they need to say it's okay to need things, and you're going to see their independence come out in different ways, like self-advocacy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
100%.
Completely agree.
Yeah. These are great answers. Thank you. All right, let's go to the second question. What supports can be put in place in the new school environment? Is louder, more crowded, or overwhelming? Now, we already touched about, that whole transition is overwhelming in general, but right. So, if they're going into grade seven, if they're going into grade eight, or if they're starting grade nine, larger classrooms, possibly, larger cafeterias, the first day of school. I'm thinking today, now I don't live too far from the high school that my son attends, and I'm hearing their pep
Mhm.
rally right now, and
Oh,
it's
wow.
loud. They've got a DJ going, so I could hear that through from my back deck. And I know for him, it's going to add. Now, knowing that this is how they do things every year, the first day of school, it's always a big deal. I asked him, okay, Sammy, did you bring your fidgets? Do you have your loops? Because he doesn't like to be obvious. He doesn't want the noise canceling headphones, but he does have the loops. And there's little things that he can use, little tools he can use to not necessarily look like he is struggling, but I know that he will
Mhm.
be. So, any other suggestions, Kara?
I mean, what you just said, like I wrote down 3 points and you just mentioned them, so I'm going to elaborate on them.
Yeah.
So the first thing being ask your child.
Hmm.
Ask your child what situations do they anticipate would be stressful and what might help.
Oh, good.
Um, you can also be introducing them to tools. I love that Dominique also mentioned the loop ear. We don't have a sponsorship deal with them. We're not getting
We
any
don't.
kickbacks from this, but loops fit inside the ear. So it's not like a headphone that goes over. So some people really prefer the full noise canceling headphones that go over, but they have different types of loop earbuds that can filter out a lot of the noise, but not necessarily, but you can get ones that don't filter out all of the noise. So you can focus more on speech, someone speaking to you, and it just takes down all of the background noise.
Mhm.
So things like that you could experiment with. Um, but again, I'm always a proponent of asking the child, what do they think would help them? Having conversations about like what could a break look like in that setting, and also when knowing that they will have been overstimulated throughout most of the day, when they come home they will also need that safe space, that break time, that understanding. Like don't ask 100 questions as soon as you see them. Give them time by themselves or time to regenerate in a way that works for them, and let them take the lead with that. But you can prompt the conversations. You can anticipate what some of the stressful parts will be for them based on what you've noticed their whole lives, and ask them questions about, well, would this be helpful for you? Or you think you have a strategy? Okay, I'm gonna let you take the lead there. You're self-advocating. You say that that's the tool you're gonna use. Okay. But asking them, having the conversations about needs, normalizing that there are needs. I love what Seth said before too, because sometimes we fall into a pattern of like hyper independence, and that is not healthy, especially for autistic people. We need to know it's okay to ask for help. We need to know that if we're confused about something, if we're distressed, we don't have to bottle it up. We don't have to hide it. That there are people we can go to, and that other people also have these experiences too, that we are not alone. So, you know, it's sort of that balance of talking to them, normalizing that these experiences happen, and that we try to find tools and safe spaces that work for us.
100%. Seth?
Yeah, I think you guys covered it like pretty well. I think my only kind of addition would be on um obviously ask your child. That's really important, but I also want to touch on the fact that sometimes I don't know. And as
Hmm.
an autistic person who is speaking 98% of the time, but also has moments where I am non-speaking,
Mhm.
I think that it's important to acknowledge that autistic children who are speaking may also be non-speaking in times,
Hmm.
and that might not look typical to what you're thinking is stereotypically non-speaking. So when your child comes home and is burnt out, they might not be able to tell you that.
Hmm.
Also, even as adults, we sometimes struggle with understanding our own emotions and putting words and descriptors to it. So I guess the point I want to make is that watch your child. You know your child better than anyone outside of themselves. And so if you see situations where, let's say you're in Walmart and the lighting is strong and it's a crowded Saturday, and you know those are things you can see the physical cues in your child. Watch what they do that makes them feel better. What
Mhm.
stims are they using? Are
Mhm.
those stims that they are going to implement at school or be embarrassed? How can we alter them to fit the setting then so
Hmm.
that they can still get whatever that stim need is being met
Mhm.
without so I guess just pay attention to also because what works in other scenarios, sometimes just trying to implement brand new tools like at school, this is going to happen, do this. It's a lot harder, but skills that are practiced and consistently used in all areas, even if they have to be tweaked for different environments, that's what they're going to default to anyway, right?
Hmm.
So that's where the focus, I think, should lie.
100%.
There is a great app. One of my graduate students who is autistic introduced me to this. It's called Leroux, and it's like an AAC, an augmentative and alternative communication app that has pictures and feelings and things like that. So even
Okay.
having, introducing them to that at home and having it be like, something they can explore and use when they don't, either aren't able to word or don't feel like using words
Mhm.
to communicate. Like, I agree, like preparing them with tools in advance of the time that they are expected to use the tool can increase comfort and also the likelihood that they will access those tools.
Absolutely. And also I feel it's important to say that a lot of the times, and as Seth, and I'm picturing myself, I did take my youngest to Walmart and I hate going there. And I shouldn't say that. I just don't like it's too much for him. Um, and um, and I saw that it was busy back to school shopping and everything else. And he was struggling, but he won't admit to struggling. But I was
Hmm.
watching him and I was thinking, okay, how is he going to deal with this? That particular section that he was going to, that aisle that he was looking to go towards, was packed with kids, um, and anxious kids and happy kids because it was close to, like, there were fidgets and toys and stuff like that. And I thought to myself, how will he go? And he made his way, but I could tell by his body language that he wasn't 100% comfortable. So watching them, it's incredible what you can really depict from paying attention and watching how they react. And then using that. You remember when you were to Walmart that one time, like, it was loud, it was busy, you were a little, you were concerned about going into that one area. Well, how did you prepare yourself? What did you do to make you feel better? So these are questions that I 100% agree that parents should be asking their child first. And as they grow up, those stems, those needs might change, but they're still there, for the most part, because, the scenarios are scenarios and overstimulation is overstimulation, no matter what the circumstances are. Also, I wanted to note that, in our previous sessions, Kara, we spoke about that time after school to decompress. And I have, when we spoke of that, I've been living that religiously and have taken your advice on that. And it is so important, especially for my youngest, that once he's home from school, he goes in his room and he
Mhm.
games, and he just shuts down. Sometimes he has to just he doesn't nap because he's too busybody to nap. He should nap, but he just decompresses. And we just take the opportunity at supper time when we're all sitting at the table together to start asking those questions. We don't
Mhm.
drill him, but we ask him
Mhm.
about his day. So I am like this. I woke up this morning and Kara, I was thinking about you because I know that this is what you encourage these kids to do and for caregivers to appreciate and understand. And I know, okay, and I got chills when I think about it. When he gets home, I have to work very hard
Yeah,
at not asking him any questions unless he's volunteering them. But I know he's just going to give me if anything, the very basic. The details will come once he's had that time to just decompress.
exactly.
So thank you for that. And I think it's important for the caregivers to hear about that too. It's so important.
Can I add one more thing on this
Of
question that I
course.
just realized? I'll make it quick, I swear.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to touch on is being understimulated. So I was thinking and listening, and as we were talking there, I was reminded of my 9-year-old who is a very big vocal stimmer. And so
Mhm.
when we think about a new school environment being more crowded, um, sometimes that's a reason why he can't stim because he can't disrupt the classroom.
Mhm.
He's like a tongue clicking, beatboxing,
Ah.
vocal stimmer all the time. And so one thing is when he gets home from school, it's like it's nonstop.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I own loops. That's what I was looking for when you brought it up because normally they're right on my desk. I was gonna be like, look, I can show you. Um, because yeah, so I think another big thing is to knowing that sometimes even the new school environment might be understimulating. And how do you handle that? How do you give kids the opportunity, body breaks and those things? So it's
Mhm.
not just about the noise canceling headphones
Mhm.
and the safe spaces, but also how can it's advocating for the moving chairs,
Mhm.
rocking chairs, or the wobbly chairs, or a minute to go out in the hallway and beatbox if that's what
Yeah,
you
yeah,
need to do, right?
yeah.
Like,
Run the track at break, like whatever it is.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That, yeah,
My
100.
son struggled with math specifically and focus, and one of the things that one of his excellent teachers did was they would go and they would walk the track and she would just follow him and verbally dictate the math questions and that was it became part of his IEP that she would verbally dictate the math questions and he would verbalize the answer as they were walking the track at his
Wow.
school.
Mhm. I think Kara would remember my youngest as well. Body breaks was to run the track, and he would
Mhm.
invite a buddy, and it would be a race, in elementary when he was much younger, and
Yeah.
that would give him that opportunity to, give him that body break that he needed because he is ADHD as well, and including someone from his, one of his
I love
peers.
that.
So it was fun, and it did. Once he got back, it was incredible what the impact was on, you know, Sammy being able to get that break that he needs, and that was his way of stimming. That was his way to decompress in the middle of something that was may have been over or underwhelming, right? So
Mhm.
these are great points. Oh, great points. If we had a school, the three of us together, it would be quite the school, I'll tell you.
Yes, it would.
So, how can caregivers ensure their child's needs are understood and met in a larger, less personal school setting? Kara, I'll let you start with this.
I think the first thing to remember, and I say this to teachers just as much as I say it to parents, is we have to remember we're all on the same side.
Yeah.
Um, and, we have to extend compassionate assumptions to, teachers, to parents. So even though it's less personal, like I do believe the majority of educators really like want to do a good job and want to support children. Obviously, this can be challenging when there are lots of needs,
Mm.
and I think your best sort of approach as a parent is to as best you can, introduce yourself and send an email. It does not have to be in person. Something that the teacher can absorb at their own time and thank the teacher if they are using strategies that are working, that can really help reinforce those things happening. Um, and you know, I believe we should try and get our students, our children, to take the lead with advocacy, but at the same time, not everyone will.
Mm.
So, as I mentioned before, having your child prepare like some sort of self-advocacy letter or document, you can still send an email and say, "Oh, Jimmy's going to be giving you this letter, but I'm sending you a copy." If you're worried that that step isn't going to happen, but we really want to also be encouraging it to be student led, um, because we want them to be able to do that if they can for themselves. Um, and of course, when you need to, you bring up concerns to the teacher. If you're not making much headway, you can talk with the special education lead, principal, vice principal, other members of the staff. But I think it's always great to try to solve it with the first person before it goes to any other level. I'm sure parents in the, Seth and Dominique will have more to say on this.
I love that self-advocacy letter. Seth, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to touch more on something that can be done in the home by the parents. I think from an autistic perspective, I think that one thing that you can do instead of making it, a lot of the times this conversation feels like it's parents of autistic children versus the school
Hmm.
system, which presents like parents of autistic children against the teacher. And that, having worked in the school system, by the way, a prior job I had was I worked in section classrooms here in Ontario when that still existed. I have worked with autistic children in schools, and I have worked as an EA, or an enhanced support worker in classrooms as well. So the most important thing for me is consistency at home and leading by example.
Mm.
So I think that if you want to talk about having your child be able to self-advocate, are you allowing that at home as well?
Hmm.
As a parent, I want to know if your child is feeling dysregulated, are you asking, how can I accommodate you? Are you expecting things from the school that maybe you're not implementing at home? And I'm not saying this with ill intent or anything, but I think that that's something that's often missed. So if you want your child to be able to say to the teacher, I need this, and you want to be able to come at the teacher and say, my child needs this, I hope that you are prepared to, now that I've said this, take a step back and look, is this happening in our home as well?
Mm.
Hmm.
Is my child comfortable to advocate? Because that's where they learn things, and what they do. I'm going to repeat this throughout this whole series. What you do on a regular basis is what you're going to default to. If you stub your toe and say ow, the next time you stub your toe, you're probably going to say ow, even if it doesn't hurt. We build habits through
Hmm.
repetition, through practice, through continuation. If your child is advocating at home for themselves, they're going to be able to advocate at school because they're going to know it's okay to speak to adults in a certain tone and in a self-advocacy framework, I guess. Um, so yeah, that would be my only recommendation. If you're a parent and you really want your child to be heard and understood, teach them how to advocate, and not just tell your teacher this. Tell them I said to tell your teacher this, but show your kids what it's like to advocate to an adult and what it's like to have a reciprocal relationship. Because yes, you're the parent and you're the disciplinarian and you're there to teach them, but you're there to teach them. So teach them
Yes.
how to advocate by allowing them to do that.
And
And
the root of the word discipline is to learn, like to learn in Latin. So,
Mm.
Dominique, this reminds me of, I think the last of these that we did, someone had asked about, well, what if my child going off to university doesn't ask for these accommodations? And that was one of the points that we had made then too, is you also have to listen to your child's voice. If you want your child to connect that their voice is important, that their voice, whether that is, of course, a spoken words, written words, some other way of communicating, just what Seth said, like we want them to connect that them articulating needs has the result of them having those needs met.
Mhm.
And we don't want to steamroll our children
No,
either. Yeah.
we don't. And I'll be the first to say that I am guilty of relying on an ally at school. So knowing how my youngest is, he's an introvert, doesn't know how to advocate for himself. And we've worked in trying to provide him with the tools and everything else to do this. And he's getting a little bit better, but in elementary, he had a resource worker that worked with him from kindergarten all the way to grade 6.
Hmm.
And I depended on her so much because she got to know him since he was a toddler pretty much. And she could read his body language, and she would know if he's having an off day, and we would communicate kind of behind his back. And it was wrong. It was wrong in a sense where how are we helping our child self-advocate, or even ask for things? Mind you, he was non-speaking, but there were other ways of communicating. And
Well,
had we had been proactive from the get-go as parents, um, because we've dealt, our first child is an extrovert. He says everything that's on his mind. Meanwhile,
of
our other
course.
one's the complete opposite. And it was a new adjustment for us as caregivers as well. So we were doing him a disservice. We were doing Sammy a disservice by having that ally. In the same breath, um, knowing that I had someone I can trust and text on
Hmm.
occasion and say, Sammy kind of had a rough morning, or, we
Hmm.
had a family situation and I'm just a little concerned. Do you know what he's like today? Can you tell me a
Hmm.
little, like, and it's almost like that was like the maximum that I would really reach out to her and ask. I wouldn't go above and beyond that, but I just needed to know that he was okay. But I think we all, as caregivers, we probably
Yeah.
all have a contact within that school system, who can spy on our kids. And it's probably not right, but we
But
do it
sharing
anyway.
insights, I don't think you should be kicking yourself at all. I think sharing insights is fine. It comes from a good place. I think um, you know, we're always going to hypothesize, oh, they might be struggling with this or not, but our child, our student, they are the person that we want the insights from ultimately. Like we
Mm.
can make our best guesses, but don't, I guess, just not assuming our interpretation is correct, right?
Right,
Uh,
And
right.
also maybe finding that person for the child because
yes.
as a former student and child, I had those people that were my safe people who
Yeah.
I told who I really felt, especially in this
Yes.
transition age where if you don't have the communication with your parents at I mean, let's be honest, if we're talking 12 to 14-year-olds, even if you have the best parent-child relationship in the world, there's still things they're not going to tell you at this age because that's the phase, the transition that they're in, right? So maybe finding out and pointing out to them who is their person and
Hmm.
letting them know that it's okay if they can't or don't want to talk to you, but reminding them that they have that person that they
Hmm.
can check in with, that and making sure that maybe that person does know some of their regulation skills and telling the child, tell them, if this is your best friend in the world, tell them when I am feeling X, Y helps. Because kids are actually really supportive of each other in friendships like that. And I think that if they are advocating for themselves to their friends, that's also a good start
Yes.
for them because adults are scary when you're a kid, especially advocating for yourself.
Mhm.
A lot of children are taught that adults are authority figures in
Hmm.
sometimes negative light. So having just a peer that they can advocate to also builds those skills.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah. Oh, it's nice to hear that, it's nice to hear that side of things too, because as a caregiver, it's nonstop worry. Okay, what can caregivers do to support their child in making new friends and navigating more complex social dynamics? Now, Seth, you just mentioned, how it's, having a buddy, having a peer is important. So tell me, and I'm thinking of a situation in my head right now that I'm still doing, and tell me, I'm curious to know your thoughts on this, and Kara, yours as well. So we have a family situation where my husband is extremely ill, and we're having good days and bad days, clearly. And Sammy doesn't necessarily talk much about it. Like I said, he's an introvert. It takes him a lot to express his emotions, especially if he's enjoying an activity or whatnot, he can express that, but that's pretty much the limit. Like that's the maximum. He won't elaborate on anything more towards like that emotional piece, right? So um he does have a very, very close friend that he grew up with, and the teachers are ensuring that they remain in the same class ever since kindergarten because they are very, very close. And oftentimes, if Sammy's having a rough go, um his peer, his buddy, will talk to his parents about it, and then I'll get the text from the parents, and they'll say, so and so said that Sammy was, he seemed a little upset today or sad today, or is everything okay, is there anything we can do? And what I love about this relationship, and again, it may act as a disservice, I don't know, but in the interim, I love knowing that we have these we have this circle, like they say it takes a village, which it does, but in return to that, i I am open with this family, and I tell them everything. And what they do is, because they're such kind people and they're excellent parents, they share a lot of what we are going through as a family with their son, who
Mhm.
is Sammy's best friend. So they are teaching their son how to be that person for Sammy. And I love knowing that he's got people, even if it's the same age, in his life on a daily basis that can support him in all kinds of different ways. But is it selfish of me as a parent to put this kind of load on his friend, his peer, who is so young, 12 or 13 years old, and has known about this for has been that particular, taken on more of a friendship kind of responsibility, knowing what we are going through as a family for the past 4 years. So is this a lot to ask of a child? It probably is, and it's probably very selfish of me, but I'm curious to get, Seth, your take on this.
Not at all. There are obviously appropriate lines of information that, in my opinion, children should have access to. But when it comes to like, you can't shelter children from the world.
Mm-hmm.
There are kids who have dads who are very ill. And this child being a part of this, um it isn't too much. That, and first of all, like, that's not even for you to decide because you're not this child's parent.
Mhm.
And so I think that if that child's parent felt like it was, because it's their job to see how their child is interpreting and handling the information and how they're processing. But I'm assuming, based on the fact that this is still an ongoing thing, that they're seeing their child blossom in empathy and compassion
Yeah.
and being able to um feel good about themselves and build a real relationship. When we think back to our childhood relationships and what our foundations of friendship were, how many of us can say that our real best friend in elementary school was founded on like genuine kindness and empathy and understanding of each other's living situations? Like, because most of my best friends were my best friends because like they liked the same color as I did, and I grew up in a small town, so it was like you picked a best friend and that was that was that. Like, and so even though by the time that I hit high school and was graduating elementary school, my best friend and I really didn't have anything in common anymore, but we were still best friends because that's in terms of encouraging making new friends and navigating, I think that you will never find someone more aware of their authenticity. I won't say more authentic because in a society where there has been masking and discouragement of autistic traits, you won't always see that person presenting who they are. But I think that if you want to know who in the world knows themselves the best, it's an autistic person. They know what they like, they know what they need, they know what makes them feel good, they know who they are. As an autistic person, if I'm not interested or passionate about something, I don't, it's just not a thing. But I can talk to you for 5 hours about squirrels because I went through a special interest with squirrels, right? So like,
You need to come to my house, Seth, because I back onto a conservation area. I have lots of squirrels you can tell me about.
okay, okay.
New
Um,
friend
but I
made.
think it's like, so I think the biggest thing in this transitional age for like, I would say starting at like age 10 all the way through high school, the thing that I wish someone had done for me, as both just a generic teenager, I think this applies across the board, for neurotypical, neurodivergent, whatever, um, is that encouraging of authenticity. So you're gonna make friends because if I was in high school and was obsessed with squirrels, I might meet someone who is obsessed with squirrels. And I think we need to focus on not caring about what that other person's social status is. Because, like I said, autistic people know what they're interested in, they know what they want to talk about and the types of people that they want to be around. And if you can encourage, you don't need to mask to fit into category A. You
Mhm.
don't need to make friends based on shared interests, shared goals, shared values. If we were doing that for all kids in all settings, the world would be a much more beautiful place. But
Agreed.
specifically for autistic children, I think if you just continue to encourage them to, like, if they're obsessed with soccer, let them be obsessed with soccer. Tell them to find the other people on the soccer team, try out for those soccer teams. You know what I mean? Do those things. Um, and really encourage them to engage in what they enjoy in.
Mhm.
And take the emphasis off of making friends for the sake of having friends. That's you don't need to have friends because it doesn't reflect on you poorly as a parent if your child chooses to not engage socially. But there is going to be something that your child is super interested in and knows a lot about. And if they find someone who shares even a smidge of that interest, that's a friend connection.
Yeah.
And also listen to your child if they tell you that they don't need or want friends or don't want to socialize. Because I love people on paper. I love talking. Monologuing is what I call it. At my house, I monologue to people. But at the end of the day, like my best friend will be like, "Do you want to hang out?" Like 3 times a week. I'll be asked, "Do you want to hang out?" And it's like, no, no, no. I like the idea of having a friend and I like to be able to talk to you when I want to talk to you, but I suck at being a friend and engaging in social things. So also know that the expectation of friends or how you feel about needing social connections as a parent is not necessarily how your child feels, and that's okay. Ask them.
Yes. Okay. That was also things that I wrote down because that's something I see all the time is parents feeling like their child should have many, many friends. Sometimes we only have energy for one friend. And guess what? One friend is a protective factor against anxiety and depression. Like too many friends can be overwhelming. Um, and I completely agree with Seth. Finding friends through the hobbies and interests that your child has, like those are going to be people who speak the same language as them, who they can more easily connect with. So, joining clubs, camps that are focused on, computer coding or whatever their interest is, rather than just like, let's learn social skills. They're more likely to connect with other kids or teens who have the same interest as them. And, interactions take a lot of energy. hence why also we're encouraging, like, one or two really solid friendships is going to be less draining and more restorative for your child than if they're expected to, connect with and remember details about a billion people. Um, I also find, I'll have students who have internalized messages about how they should have more friends, and they're not really thinking about the quality of the friend. And I think it's so important that we speak to our children and our students about, well, who do you feel comfortable with?
Yeah.
Why do you feel comfortable with them?
Mhm.
What is it that that person does that makes you feel safe? Like we want them paying attention to their body cues and reactions to people. Like how explicitly talk about why friendships develop, how they develop, what are the qualities of a friend, and what are the qualities of someone who is not a good friend. I do have a tool on my website about this as well. And
Good.
it's also a way where you can talk about, well, if that's someone you're comfortable with, if that's someone that you want to develop a friendship with, what do we do next? Like how do friendships develop from here? So you've identified this person you feel comfortable with, you've seen they're nice to other people, you get a good sense from them, you know, what are some other things that we do to move to next levels of friendship,
Yeah.
right? Having more interactions, remembering details and asking them questions later about, oh, you went to Wonderland on the weekend. How was that? Like what are the things that we do that signal to other people interest, but also that we can interpret as signals from others, because it's not just the autistic person has to change and do things.
Yeah.
It's they have a choice about who they want to be friends with as well. And how do we pick up on who might think we're cool people, who might think we're fun to be around, and really really having those conversations and getting across like friends should make you feel respected, friends should make you feel like they enjoy being around you, they enjoy listening to you, like all of those things that are really what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really liked, we get a lot of parents calling in, especially, once school does start, we will get quite a few emails and calls, and these will be caregivers who are concerned because, the teachers will say, or the caregiver will be driving by the schoolyard and see that their child is by themselves. And, after a couple of weeks, the caregiver will reach out to the teacher and say, has my child made any friends? And the teachers will say, your child likes to be by themselves at the schoolyard.
Mhm.
And it's an automatic concern for caregivers because they're worried that their child is lonely. But in hindsight, these children are probably learning how to process their day, the subject they just you wrapped up before
Yeah,
recess or lunch,
they
or
need the
they need
break.
that alone time. Otherwise, if they are forced on making friends and forced into a circle and forced
Yeah,
into
you can be just as lonely sitting surrounded by kids. Like,
exactly, give them that space. And I am, again, and I'm neurotypical, but there's nothing I love more than to be by myself. It's awful. I do have a large, circle of people I care about and who care about me, but it's life is hard enough and busy
mhm.
enough. You don't have time, especially as a caregiver, to do anything for yourself. So if
Yeah,
I can like escape for an hour or two and just be by myself, I'm equally as happy with that, if not probably more. So these
yeah,
kids are probably experiencing that same flow, right? It's
yeah.
give me my recess, give me that alone time. If mom sees me and I'm by myself, well, there's a reason for it. This is the reason. Please don't panic. This is what they want for themselves.
Mhm.
If they choose, or if they are struggling with spending recess by themselves, they will tell you, or they will tell somebody
Yeah.
um, when you ask. But at first, this is completely okay. It's okay,
Mhm.
you know.
And I like what, well, both of you sort of referenced, like socializing in your own way, or doing things your own way. Like I have a really dear friend, and we will send each other voice notes, and there's no expectation of an immediate response. So you just respond when you can, even if it's 5 days later, and we monologue, and it's wonderful. But you feel heard, even though you don't know when they've listened to it.
That's right. And it's really good for info dumping as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, this is great. Okay, so then how can caregivers support their child in adapting to increased homework, different teaching styles, and higher expectations, which do happen in that junior year? The grade seven, grade eight, and then even the grade nine. These are really like three, to me, these are important. Every year is important, clearly, but these are really heavy transitional years, not only for the child as a student, but the child as an individual, because this is also that time where their bodies are changing and their hormones are a little off and
Mhm.
different, and puberty is in the mix, and it's just a hard. I'm the first to say it is a tough time to be a parent right now. It is hard.
Oh, yeah.
So let's add the homework into the mix, and let's add those higher expectations into the mix. Kara, give me some advice.
Okay. So, first of all, I hate homework, but people will have homework sometimes. So, if your child has homework, I have a whole blog post with ideas for you. I'm going to try to speak to some of them that I remember off the top of my head now, but you can also check that out. One of the things we want to avoid doing, both as teachers and as parents or caregivers, is assuming our children should just know how to do this.
Yeah.
And sometimes they will know how to do something, that's fine. But for things like projects, we want to actually help them to break it down and understand how to manage it over time. I have a strategy that I call the chunk and check-in.
Oh, yes.
Uh, and Basically, this can work just for homework or for projects, but basically, if your child, is used to having you around when they do homework, you sort of phase this in and you talk to them about, okay, what's the first subject you're going to work on? Okay, what's the first task? Do you understand what you need to do? Okay, you walk away. You walk away for, the length of time you think they can reasonably manage to do that task without you checking back in. Like, for some it might be shorter than others, but
Mhm.
you then come back and say, how's it going? And if they're stuck, you can prompt them. And if not, you move on to the next thing. You do a little check-in and you go, okay, what are you doing for the next part? Okay, do you understand? Do you have any questions? All right. You're still in the vicinity. So they're still benefiting from this sense of body doubling. They know that you're there if they need help, but you're not sitting right next to them. So they're still getting a sense of like, I can do things on my own. That's really what we want to build is like they don't need someone to prompt them and poke them and for every single question we want to give them space to try and experience what it's like to do that, and then increasingly over time the check-ins, the period between checking in it is longer. They work for longer. You can eventually fade it, hopefully entirely, like where you just do like, you want me to look anything over? Okay, all right, I'm going to trust you to
Yeah.
take your work back. For projects can be really, really overwhelming. Um, it's hard, especially for those of us who have ADHD, sometimes to visualize the end product, or we're overwhelmed by the totality of the task. So helping them to understand, A, you don't have to do it in one sitting. It's meant to be managed a little bit every day over time, breaking it down together into a to-do list and then like mapping it onto a calendar. Okay, today you're going to work on your title slide and, and finding the visual, like, but teaching them how to break things down and then seeing if they can break it down on their own, like for the next one. And just teaching them some of those executive functioning supports, like how to use a calendar, how to use an agenda, how to, um, divide up homework time and, predict how long something will take, which can be really, really hard. But even writing it down. So sometimes we're overwhelmed because we think, oh no, this math is going to take 6 hours. Oh, it actually took 20 minutes. And that can help us to make better predictions next time as well and manage some of those feelings that can get in the way. And just having those conversations, they are going to have teachers who have different styles.
Mm.
If it's a style that they find inaccessible, then it's like, well, what do you think you can say to your teacher? What do you think you can ask for? Like, and coaching that again, that self-advocacy piece.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I would say like make it as clear as possible, predictable as possible, but also giving them space to try things on their own.
Hmm. It's all part of growing up. Seth, I bet you have an app for this.
I do actually. Goblin Tools. Okay. It is a one-time payment app. I don't know what it costs now, but when I bought it, it was 99 cents, and that's a lifetime access. Goblin Tools. So it does several things. One is there's a to-do. So you type in your list of things you need to do for the day. You choose your neuro spicy level. It's little peppers. You slide the slider to max peppers if you need to, and then you hit the magic wand button. It is like a magic wand, and it will break it down based on the spicy level that you gave it. So one time I needed to clean my room. This is way off topic, but one time I needed to clean my room, and I was like, all right, I need the highest level of spice here. And it was like, stand up from your chair, take a deep breath,
Yeah.
The next smallest task. I
take
love it.
steps to
Yeah.
your bedroom. Open the curtains if they're not open so you have light. Like it will break it down for you. It also does things like judge context of emails and texts and time estimations. So you can hit a start stop in this app. So you can say like, I'm going to do my homework, and hit start. And when you're done, you hit stop and it will remember that. So next time it can utilize that. And based on the steps that it's giving you, also, you don't always have to record the time. It can estimate time for you. So that is something that a lot of neurodivergent people, myself included, struggle with is time blindness and the concept of time. We
Hmm.
hear time blindness as like autistic or ADHD people getting hyper focused and then losing time, but we also don't often realize that it affects the way our executive function operates because we'll look at a task and think this is going to take 3 hours, but it might only actually take 45 minutes. So
I also
even
do the opposite sometimes where I'm like, oh yeah, I can finish this in 45 minutes, and it's like 3 hours later.
yeah, I do the same thing. Like on my I'm on fire days, I'll make a to-do list that includes, cleaning my whole house top to bottom, rearranging my whole life. And I'm like, all right, I've got like 4 hours. I can do this. And this will only take me 20 minutes. And then it's like an hour and a half later, right? So,
Yeah.
but this app really helps. It also can make food for you if you put like a list of what you have in your fridge.
Oh my gosh.
Um, it has a formalizer where anyway, it's a great app for very cheap.
And we are not endorsing any apps, just so we all know. We're not sponsoring any apps at this point, but we are recommending apps that work. Okay,
Yeah.
just I wanted to make that clear.
Yeah. This is
Pomodoro
just my
Kitty.
personal experience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pomodoro Kitty is a website that you can
Yes.
use.
It's so cute.
I
It's an
love
app
it.
too. You can download the app too.
Yeah. Oh, it's an app too. Okay. Well, I taught all of my students, all of my elementary students, and actually my university students about it, how to use it to basically you can adjust the time, but the Pomodoro technique is you work for 25 minutes, you get a 5 minute break. You do that like 3 times in a row, you get a longer break. But the clock is adjustable. So for younger children, you can make it like work for 15 minutes or 10 minutes, get a couple of minutes of break. But my students have really found it's helped their flow and also normalize the idea it's okay to take breaks because sometimes like our way of thinking it's hard to relax and we're stressed so much all of the time and it's like I just need to be done this, but the breaks actually help with the regulation and the energy to get through the task.
I just want to say one more thing, sorry, about like the perspective of adapting to increased homework and different teaching styles, etc. Um, I'm gonna be a little bit like out of left field here, and I just from my personal opinion, okay? So I don't want to offend any teachers or any parents, but um as an autistic person who struggled sometimes with certain subjects in homework and increased demands, I just want to throw out there that my understanding of the education system is to teach your child how to learn and to learn those executive function skills. They learn the basics of math and language in early years. And so when we're looking at these transitional years, these are we're moving into learning about things that are going to prepare them for maybe their future career or goals. But most of the time, we're just looking at things that are age appropriate and handing them to students in a way that teaches them how to learn. So, like Kara was talking about those executive function skills of like planning a project over time. That's the real lesson. The
Hmm.
lesson is not, the 80-page essay about the polar bear.
Yeah.
It's how did you get there?
Yeah.
So if your child is struggling with those things, let the homework go. Don't forget about that, right? You're teaching, if your child is absorbing the learning and is understanding the concept and those skills, don't worry about forcing the sit down and do the 8 pages of math. And you can advocate that to the teacher.
Yeah.
You can say, my child understands that sometimes there are going to be things that come home or whatever. And the teacher's not going to fail you if you are like, my kid's not doing this homework, not participating in this.
Yeah.
But here's how I can show you that they're understanding what you're trying to teach, right? Like you can advocate for your child because their mental
Yes.
health is a lot harder to go back and fix than bits of pieces of education that they will learn as they are comfortable and competent and able and desiring that, right?
Yeah. Have a maximum like cutoff time for homework too, because yeah, just like Seth said, like they shouldn't be coming home and having to do a work shift after a work shift, you know? Yeah, reduce, if there's too much math homework, pick a couple of each section and say, well, they showed that they could do it 3 times in each section. I didn't feel the need to make them do it 15 times in each section.
Could you
Like,
imagine if I just realized in the concept of homework, could you imagine if in like as an adult,
yeah.
when you left work and were no longer being paid, they were like, by the way, when you go home, work on this though, and like come back tomorrow and show me.
Well, teachers do marking in the evening, but yeah, no, but
Well, that's,
yeah,
yeah. I
I
mean, the
do know.
system is flawed. We could talk about that for a long time.
I am looking at this question, and what I see, what I'm pulling from this is, and we may not have too much time to elaborate on this particular one, but if we could quickly offer, if or say we, but if you, both of you, can quickly offer some advice, the different learning style and higher expectations. For example, group work. Um, I see that, my youngest has such a difficult time with group work because the expectations are completely different. And you are working with, a group of kids who may have, strengths in certain subjects or passions of sorts that are really irrelevant to, my son, who's the introvert, who doesn't know how to contribute in group work, who doesn't like to work in group work because his thoughts are his, and he feels that group work is essentially, um, you know, it's that outside of the box thinking that he's not comfortable with just yet. Having to produce a project that involves multiple students, right? And he just wants to do what he knows. He struggles with the group work, and I feel that those expectations as they get older, especially in that junior high, to get them ready for high school, working in a team environment, blah blah blah, he struggles with that. So those are like the different teaching expectations and or styles and expectations. I'd like to get quick little feedback from the both of you on how to address this. How do
Mhm.
we encourage him to go with it and try to think outside the box? Or do we, say, if you don't feel comfortable working in, a group setting, talk to your teacher and advocate for yourself?
Mhm.
Thoughts, Kara? What do you think?
So I have many thoughts. I'll try to rein it in, the stuff going on in my head. Many of my thoughts are for teachers because there are ways you can structure group work to make it um, more predictable and also where you can prime the group beforehand, like what happens if everyone has different ideas? Like you can have conversations to build skills before the group work happens, and then afterwards, what were some of the challenges? What do we think would work next time? Like Seth said, we're always building those other skills. It's really about those other skills, less about the actual project.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like also self-advocacy. So as a teacher, there are times I will want students to work in a group because I want them to have those opportunities to build those skills. And I'm thinking about my autistic students here. Um, but I also would be open to having times where it is an option to work in a group or not. So you can talk to your child and say, well, maybe speak to your teacher, see if this is one that you can opt out of doing the group work and do an alternative. But you will want to encourage them to sometimes do the group work. There are things at home you can do to build some of those skills that help in group work. So I'm thinking things like family board games, especially things that are like role-playing games where you're working together, you're coming up with a plan together. You do have to be open to other people's ideas. Um, challenges like so one of the things I do with my students in small groups is I get one of those like small Lego kits, like building a little Lego car, and we do it where there are three specific roles. There is the engineer, and the engineer has to give verbal instructions without showing anyone else the book or touching the Lego pieces to the other two roles. So the other two roles are the supplier. So that means the engineer has to say, find me a yellow 2x4 piece that is flat, and thin. So they have to communicate and then make up for any communication gaps in communication, to try again a different way if the person isn't understanding.
Mhm.
And then they then also have to give the instructions to the builder of how to put those pieces together.
Hmm.
So like we review how like different Lego vocabulary we can use,
Yeah.
and it's a huge challenge, but over time it becomes easier to communicate, to take perspective, to adjust when someone isn't understanding our initial communication,
Mm.
and they rotate the roles. So things like that, having little challenges like that, or building a structure together without words with Lego or Capla blocks, and you're like a spaceship, and you can't move somebody else's piece. You can only add on. So you have to accept other people's ideas. Like there are lots of things that you could do as like a fun family activity
Mhm.
where you're building some of those abilities to work with others, to share ideas, to compromise on ideas, that can make it more predictable when they go to do it at school.
That's some really good advice. Board games, family board night, family game night. That's awesome. Seth, do you have anything you want to add?
I just want to say that I hated group work as an autistic
Mm.
person. I still do. And so, one thing that I want to present is that any group work that I did in my experience through college, all through any schooling, was not at all relevant to my ability to work in a team.
Mhm.
So my experience in working with teams as a professional have been multidisciplinary and generally where everyone has a specific role. I think
Mm.
in my experience in group work, it's like sort it out for yourselves. That's really dysregulating and really not realistic. In the real world, you're
Yeah.
not gonna like go get a job even at McDonald's and just like have to figure out who's the manager and whose
Who's doing the
ideas you're gonna
French fries?
follow. And exactly, like you have a freaking role. So if your kid is coming to you and saying, like, I don't want to do group work, I say, go ahead and advocate that they don't have to do that because they're going to learn about sharing ideas and communicating by telling you they don't want to do group work. They're sharing an idea. You're giving them the feedback. You're compromising on solutions. There are so many real life examples that you can be implementing at home, family board games, all those things, deciding what's for dinner. Give your kid, a night where they get to pick what's for dinner and oh, I don't really feel like that night. Those are ways that you can engage in teaching those basically pragmatic speech and social skills and teamwork skills without forcing weird group work at school. However, I love the Lego communication thing, and
Yeah.
I clearly just didn't have teachers as cool as you.
You are a cool teacher, Kara.
I've never really been called cool before. Thanks,
Oh no,
guys.
I wish my kids had you as a teacher. I
Same.
wish. I wish. I think Seth would have liked you as a teacher as well.
hmm
Thank you for your feedback. I appreciate that. I think it's really important to share that because it's um not something that comes through family support, but as a caregiver myself, I know that that's where with the end of the year when we get that famous report card that I really try not to take too seriously. I don't know if I should say that out loud, but I just did. Um I see that that's where he struggles is his group work. And I'm sorry, but I think my son's going to be an entrepreneur, and he's going to run his own business or be his own engineer, or I don't know. He's going to do something, but group work is just not his strong suit. And I know it's difficult for many autistics as well, neurodivergents, to work in a group setting. So thank you for answering that. Excuse me. So what are the signs of stress or anxiety or masking, which Seth, you had just mentioned in this last questions, that caregivers should look for, and how can they respond proactively? So Seth, I'll let you take the lead on this one if you don't mind.
So I think if we think back to our kids at their youngest age that we can remember them being
Mm.
unaware of social expectations. That is their most authentic, most non-masking self, okay? So with my 9-year-old, for instance, I already said is a vocal stimmer. So we went to a family dinner on the weekend, and Silver all day had been like singing and humming and like just sometimes it's just more than others, and it was nonstop. And so my husband had mentioned to me, like, I wonder if he's gonna do it at this family gathering. Like, what is his comfort level in, and do you think that it's like a conscious choice or subconscious? So we go to this family dinner, and he's quiet, just doing his own thing, like interacting socially, but no constant stimming, right? But a couple hours in, he's kind of burnt out and done. He went and sat in the car, and just was like, I'm just gonna sit in the car until it's time to go. And the second we got home, it was back to that beatboxing, tongue clicking, go, 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 nonstop. So we looked at each other and we had a conversation with him that night about, you know, that you can stim, that you're safe to do that if that's what makes you feel better, especially at family gatherings. And then we had a conversation about you can even do it at school within reason if you're not disrupting the teacher or the class or other people. Because I think that because he was focusing so hard on being
Mm.
quiet at this family dinner, he burnt out more quickly than he would have if he had realized or felt safe to just be like off in his own world doing his own thing and still stimming. He might not have needed to go sit in the car. So when we're talking about looking for signs of stress, anxiety, or masking, we're looking for that burnout. We're looking for that I'm too exhausted to tell you. I'm losing interest. I don't have energy for things that I want to do or like to do. Um, and if you're wanting to know about masking, go back to your child at their youngest age that you can remember, because Silver started vocal stimming when he was very little. And because we never taught him or told him, you don't be quiet, don't do that, you're disturbing people, or that's not socially appropriate, he hasn't grown out of it. He eventually learned through school, being told this is not an appropriate time and place, to be quiet at school, which is means it's extra when he gets home. So that's the other thing too, is if you're seeing this massive increase of stims when they get home, you know that they're not stimming and getting that at
Mhm.
school. And I can't speak for all autistic people, nobody can. But for me, if I don't implement alternatives to my stims, because sometimes with it still being a learning process for the whole world, certain stems still feel inappropriate, even if they're
Mhm.
not something like vocalizing in the middle of a classroom, right? So if you can find alternatives, like I think you mentioned at one point that Sammy will like fidget in his pocket so that
Mhm.
it's not outward, right? So talk to your child about what their comfort level is. But if you see them coming home and they're massively stimming and or exhausted and burnt out, those are the signs. That's what you're looking for. And you want to go back to that most authentic version of your child that you can remember. Obviously, people change and grow, but when we're talking about stims, those natural instincts, they might ebb and flow in their specific enactment,
Mm.
but like for me, one of my biggest stims is a scent, is sensory,
Mm.
like scented things. And so that has changed how it presents outwardly, but that stim to its core has been the same stim, right? So there are ways to acknowledge stims that are less embarrassing for the child or more appropriate based on the environment.
This is really good advice. Kara, I have a question for you about this, and I'm sure that you have some feedback to provide as well. But as a teacher, um, and perhaps you've seen this, at some point in your career where the caregivers may not are probably in denial at some stage, where they know that their child is unique and has unique needs, but um, may not, go through the process of having their child diagnosed. And I'm sure that working in a school system, actually, Seth, you as well, you probably have both seen where the child is not able to take care of, self-regulating at home, and now they're using, they're using their time at school to express or to deal with self-regulating, because they can't get that at home, especially when they're dealing with, you're dealing with families of large families of, many children, where the caregivers are responsible for multiple children, and who may not have gone or taken the avenues to have their child, whether it's assessed or are in denial that their child might be unique. So they use their time at school to be able to take care of that stim, and then as a teacher, you're probably seeing the stressors that the child is feeling at home. So I'm curious to see if that's happened to you, and what do those signs look like from a teacher's perspective?
Yes. And I'm sort of going to answer this in two parts. One, sort of answering the question as it is, and then I'll sort of talk about
Yeah.
the denial piece because it flows into each other. So, um, masking is also the child who gets A pluses and is perfectly well behaved. Um, it's one of the reasons I was missed. I never wanted to cause distress to my parents. I I have always sort of put other people's feelings first and hidden being very deeply unhappy and things like that. And I see so much perfectionism in children today, autistic and otherwise. And so when we see someone, even when they appear to be by like conventional metrics successful, we have to still ask, like, what is the driving force there?
Mm.
Is it anxiety? How do they handle it if something doesn't go well? Like, how, what is their level of perfectionism? Are they really hard on themselves internally? Like, um, because those things are incredibly detrimental and can have very long-term negatives. So, stress and anxiety can sometimes not look like stress and anxiety. It can be a very internalized experience. And part of it is just going to be how you interact with your child, having conversations about, you know, how they feel about things. If they, got 89%, how are they feeling about that? Hopefully they're like, yeah, it's fine. That's a pretty good mark. But if you're noticing they're really holding on to things and having difficulty shifting their mood, especially at home, like Seth said, like I used to come home and I would crash. I would need a nap. I remember in high school, my mom saying, like, why are you sleeping so much? Like you get a full night's sleep. And I didn't have the answer, but I had a complete energy crash. So how they come home, it might be meltdowns, it might be shutdowns, it might be complete lack of energy, it might be um, when I'm really burnt out, my voice, I sound sarcastic. Everything I say is just really, really flat, and my face doesn't change, and my eyebrows are like, yeah, I look unhappy, but it's just I don't have energy to add expression to the content of my anything I have to say, if I even feel like saying things. Sometimes it's so hard to word sometimes.
Mhm.
Um, so denial. Sometimes I find, I think parents are always so worried about their children, right? And rightfully so. But I would say don't let your worry about your child mean that you contribute to that sense of perfectionism. You want them to be able to talk about the things that are hard and find things that they can advocate for. You don't want them to feel like they have to do things exactly the same way as everyone else. And knowledge is power. There's a lot of really good research. I also have a blog post on this. There's a lot of great research about the power of knowing you are autistic and having a connection to a community and other people who have similar experiences, even when you have different experiences, just knowing like, okay, that's what Seth struggles with sensory, and I struggle with this other thing. We still have a shared understanding that, you know, you experience the world differently than maybe other people do, and other people don't always have understanding.
Mhm.
So we have an understanding with one another. Um, and like having an explanation for why things feel hard, that is not there is something wrong with me. Having an explanation just can release a lot of that burden, that emotional burden, the perfectionism, the sort of internalized sense of shame and internalized ableism can really help us to be able to communicate our needs more and challenge ourselves to grow in those ways. Like it took me to my mid 30s to start talking about the things I find really hard because I was bottling things up and just having my meltdowns and shutdowns in private, right?
Mhm.
And you know, I see with children when they are because I teach children who are autistic and we talk about what it means to be autistic and different experiences and you know they are aware of their diagnosis and I see the difference it makes for them to have each other, to have a teacher who is autistic, to have like an introduction to like yes, you will have heard autistic used as an insult. And yeah, that can be painful to hear. People can be ignorant sometimes and they're using it as an insult and it's never okay to use anyone's identifiers as an insult. Um, Sometimes people's knowledge is this. You and I know this. And how do we use that information to advocate, to if we're comfortable doing so, and certainly to arm ourselves in a way where what other people don't know does not hurt as much.
Mhm. That is, thank you for sharing this with us. I know that you're very transparent in this response, and I appreciate it because if if anything, your lived experience for both of you, your lived experience is what is we're really trying to communicate, and we're really trying to use as that um, the advice and the suggestions that you're providing to these caregivers, it truly is phenomenal because you're answering questions that I often think to myself, okay, what if, how do my children feel or how does my husband feel about A, B, C, or D? And you're explaining so much to me. And I work in the field and sometimes it's just I need that, the subject matter expert to tell me through their own lived experience, and this is how I learn. And you're both fantastic teachers, and I appreciate you very much. So thank you for being so transparent. We're going to move on to the next question. We have, I think, a total of 10 questions. I did add yours to the mix, Seth, that you had emailed me about earlier. So we're going to get through, and hopefully these will be as equally as helpful. Strategies that caregivers can use to build strong collaborative relationships with teachers, support staff, and administrators. So we've already kind of covered this question and some of what we've talked about. Is there anything, Kara or Seth, that you'd like to add to this? I know that Kara's idea of that self-advocacy letter and then the parents following up or the caregiver emailing the teacher directly to say, my child is providing you with this advocacy letter. I'm just giving you a heads up. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, well, this is what it looks like. It's always nice to have that kind of like that, by the way, my child's doing this, but I just want to give you a heads up that they're doing this. Um, you know, it trust is definitely an issue as a caregiver. I sometimes don't I struggle with trusting our teachers. Um, More the school system itself. I have very little faith
Me
in
too.
the system, especially lately under this leadership, if you will. And there have been cutbacks. I mean, in the French Catholic School Board in my town, they've completely cut all of these spec ed programs. So now it's full integration with between 30 to 60% support, no matter the level um, or the needs based, if you will. So it's very, very difficult. And of course, caregivers are losing faith in the system, and that rolls downhill to the principal and then to the teachers and to the EAs for the lunch ladies, whoever. So if you could provide me with one strong um, one suggestion that I, as a caregiver, can, apply, a strategy that I can apply through your suggestion on how to build that one, relationship. What's that one magic question that I need to ask a teacher to make sure that my child's needs are being met at school?
I would say the same thing that I tell teachers to do with families, like a sunshine email. Like, make sure that you are not just emailing them with, like, I need you to do this. Make sure you're saying, my child came home really happy today. They told me they loved this thing that you did. Thank you.
Ah, very nice.
Things like that build
Imagine.
rapport in both
I don't hear enough
directions.
of that, right? I imagine.
And, it means the world when you hear that as a teacher, and it like reminds you to keep doing those things too, which is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, and an email is great because it's like it doesn't expect a response. It's not like a phone call, which takes more time out of the day. It's a nice way where you can cultivate a relationship where later you can also say, "Oh, you have a trip coming up. I'm a little worried about this. Can you tell me what will be put in place?" Like it's easier to then have those conversations and um, ask more when you have the positive rapport.
Mm-hmm. Seth, do you have any follow-up suggestions?
The only thing I was going to say is that I found each teacher has a different preference of communication method. So I think the biggest thing you can do to build rapport is ask them, because in my experience, 98% of these interactions with the parents are happening outside of their paid working hours. I had Silver had a teacher last year who created a Facebook group for the page, for the classroom, sorry, to upload pictures, and then she utilized that Facebook to message parents, and she did exactly that. Would message, Silver had a really great day today. I just wanted to let you know about this really positive thing that happened. And then I'd be like, yeah, well, he said that he had a great day because you did XYZ. But that was her preferred method of communication.
Yeah.
And also finding out how often they want
Mhm.
to do that, because I know parents who have gone in and had like a communication binder, and it's like sometimes a fillable form where it's like, today little Johnny ate this and was happy for this long and struggled with this transition, and you have to fill it in and check it out. And being in schools, I love that idea, and I wish that teachers were given the time and money to do that for every child, but they're not. And so sometimes, but some teachers might say, "Oh, if you're the single parent with a single child needing this, I might do that." Or some teachers might just take it upon themselves to do that if they have the time and energy or spoons, right? So,
Mhm.
find out what their best method of communication is, because that's first of all how you're going to build rapport. How often do you want to communicate? What do you want to know from me about my child that's going to help you support my child? And what way should we communicate that to each other?
Oh, one other thing, and this may be more of like from an autistic teacher's perspective. I really hate when I get an email or a message that's just like, call me. I want to know what I'm calling you about because like the one school phone is not in an area near a computer. So it's like if I need to reference I want to come prepared for that talk. So even just saying I'd like to speak to you about this topic makes it so much more predictable so that I can be ready and bring the information that might be helpful.
Nice. These are really great suggestions. Thank you very much. So, how can caregivers encourage independence while still providing the scaffolding their children or their child needs to succeed? Hmm.
I think we've answered this.
We have
Yeah.
multiple ways,
Mhm.
definitely. again, and I think that will come, we can elaborate a little bit more in our next series when we talk about advocacy and self-advocacy. How to, because advocacy is essentially, a huge part of independence.
Hmm.
And this is a very, I mean, advocacy is important, and independence, of course, is important at any age. But when it comes to self advocacy, I feel that this is an age where they either they've got it or they don't. They struggle, and it's kind of like you've got a very short window to work with when it comes to teaching your child different stages of life, whether it's to be independent, whether it's to have those social cues or the best of the, that they can, whether it's to work in group settings, whether it's to, excuse me, a lot of these windows are short for that to actually, and I'm referring to my own children, and I'm sure it's different with every family, but for them to retain that. And it's almost like, okay, this is the age where I'm thinking for Sammy, because he's in a very tricky stage of his life, between transitioning to, teen years. He's going to be 13 in a couple of weeks. He's in puberty. He's going through puberty now, and he'd kill me if he knew I was saying this, out loud. But it is what it is. So there's a lot of opportunities where I feel like if I don't get that message through him now, it may not resonate with him later. So as a caregiver, I feel like there are different ways that you can teach your child how to be independent, without being a helicopter parent. It's just being consistent is really important. And then when it comes to our series for the self advocacy, we are going to have so many tools and so many tips and tricks to be able to offer the caregivers on how to teach, self advocacy for their child, which in turn kind of leads into independence as well. But yes, we've already answered this, and yes, I'm sorry I'm babbling on here, but this part for me was really important because it's a tough age. I'm going through that really rough stage right now with my younger one. I'm going to use that next series to really kind of work through those issues, Kara, when we do connect on that. What should caregivers know about updating or advocating for accommodations when moving into junior high or high school? Again, we've talked a little bit about, what we can advocate for. And I feel along with what the both of you have been saying is talk to your child, ask your child
Hmm.
what works. Um, but then how do we put those actions into motions, right? So how do we put those ideas and that communication that your child is sharing with you? How do you put that in motion with the teachers? Kara, do you have any suggestions?
I'm going to go back to the self-advocacy documents. I have one and it's more geared towards middle school, high school on my website. And you don't have to, your child doesn't have to do it all in one sitting. You can do it verbally and you just check the things off. But it has a whole bunch of ideas for different either accommodations or strategies in different contexts, but many of those would be great accommodations to ask for. So if your child has very strong feelings that these are the things that help for tests, you can say, are any of these things possible? But then it would be a good collaboration with you and your child to go through that and know what would help. And of course, as Dominique, you already pointed out, like before you even talk to the teachers, ask your child to talk or say, is it okay if I mention these to the teacher? Would you can we ask for these things? And explaining why. But something like that, where you have a list of possible accommodations, also shows you what's feasible because certain things are not going to be feasible in the school system, unfortunately. Like not everyone has one-on-one support. It's a very, very few people, actually. It's a very strained system. But there are other things that can be done and working from something like that and then providing that list and saying my child finds these things helpful or having your child say that is it's something that can help guide even the IEP conversation.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. Thank you for that. Seth, do you have anything you wanted to add to this one?
I just wanted to say my one, like a perfect example of this is my son, when he transitioned to high school, he was given a laptop for communication and like note-taking purposes, funded by the school. However, this laptop did not hold a charge if it wasn't plugged in. So seating became in high school. You got to remember they're transitioning from between four different
Mhm.
classrooms a day. And so if he got into a classroom and someone was sitting near the singular outlet, he would then have to go over and say, "Excuse me, I need to have this seat because I have to have my laptop plugged in," which led to him not using these accommodations. So the point that I'm trying to make is
Yeah.
making sure that the teachers know. If that means telling every teacher for their four classes for that semester that we need assigned seating and this is my assigned seat, please don't make me have to break up a group of friends every day if they sit in the spot that I need to utilize my accommodations.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do, right? So it's finding those things. At one point, he was prescribed a specific chair through an OT, but the funding through the school board would only allow the purchase of one chair. So he was having to, yeah, cart this
Aw.
chair around. So he eventually just stopped using it, right? Which meant his focus went down and his ability to participate. So it's things like, maybe having somebody in the school plan so that all four of his classes in the next semester were maybe in the same classroom or at least next door to each other
Mm.
so that he was not having to transition a chair throughout the whole school, right? So just be aware of all those little things because it's not always just like I find we get swept up in the accommodations of like noise canceling headphones or body breaks but sometimes we forget about the logistics of I
Yeah.
have a laptop that doesn't charge and I need a seat where with an outlet, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very, yes, absolutely. And these are like, they may come across as minor details for most, but they are so important. They are so important. 100%. Um, I'm gonna let you answer this one first, Seth, because this is a question that you brought up. Not necessarily a question, but it's something that's very common. And I feel that it is important that we talk about. And this is our last question. So, how do we ensure pragmatic speech is included in conversations about social skills, self-advocacy, and school supports for speaking autistic students?
Yeah, so I think that I brought this up because that's one of the things that my two children and myself struggle with the most. Pragmatic speech, for those who aren't aware, is more the social aspect of speech, the interactive part of speech. So you might be having your kids or know kids who have been in speech language to learn the formation of the shape of your mouth that you're making when you're speaking certain sounds. But pragmatic speech is more about my 17-year-old Ben. He still to this day, I don't know how many times we've worked on it, but if he calls you on the phone, he doesn't know and cannot wrap his head around when it is his turn to say hello and start speaking. If I call him, he's waiting for me to say hello. If he calls me, he's saying hello before I've answered the phone. I've explained this to him. It just doesn't compute. That's a prime example. So when we're looking at social interactions for autistic kids, I think we focus a lot on teaching the autistic kid, like, don't do this, don't do that, but instead teaching them, like, what are the expectations?
Yeah.
What are these social expectations that are kind of ingrained in our cultural in Western culture anyway, um s- socially. When do you say hello on the phone? When is it appropriate to interrupt and interject? Because sometimes in a conversation people get excited and do interject and that's fine, and other times it's like, why did you just interrupt me? And as an autistic adult who has never had any speech therapy, I struggle with this immensely still. And so trying to teach my children that even still, because sometimes we don't know what the social cues are. So saying like you're rude and don't interrupt here or you have to raise your hand to speak. Those are things that are taught. I think my point was just that I wanted to include the fact that when you're teaching your child or interacting with your child and you're saying, don't interrupt me or don't whatever, for myself and my experience as an autistic person, I need an explanation. Please tell me why I can't interrupt at this time or when I'm supposed to say what. How do I know when it's my turn to speak? Because if you tell me just stop interrupting, you're always interrupting, then I just shut down and I'm quiet because I don't know when it's my turn to speak.
Mm.
And I don't know how I'm supposed to build social skills and interact with people. How do I know when I'm boring someone because I'm monologuing? I don't read those. I'm excited. I'm in my world, right? How do I know? Those are the things that I think we need to focus on when we're talking about social skills.
Mhm. I'm a big believer in uh, like everything that I learned, I think I learned through theater, but also things like role-playing games. So it's a great way to explore communication and how that lands and affects people. But, Seth brought up cultural norms, and depending on the age of your child, you can have conversations too about how social norms are different in different parts of the world, right? And even talk about like what are autistic social norms. Or you could say things like many autistics find making eye contact uncomfortable. What is that like for you? And then you can talk about, okay, you have different options. If it's uncomfortable, you can't process, you can't look and listen at the same time, you can explain that to a teacher. Because a teacher might be from a different culture where they think eye contact is really important. Doesn't mean that value is correct, but having an understanding that we might be approaching this from two different angles and building that understanding that, I might be looking away when I speak with you. It's not because I'm rude. It's not because I'm not listening. It's actually helping me to collect and organize my thoughts. Those conversations can become a bridge for self-advocacy, but also you can come up with other things. You can say, okay, if you're not comfortable self-advocating yet, you can selectively do eye contact if you're able to, or you can look right here in the middle of the nose bridge and they won't know. You're not staring into their eyeballs. Um, I don't love strategies like that because again, it's like it's about conformity, but everyone everyone sometimes will choose to do things like that for a job interview for where you want to lead a certain way, but also talking about what to do if you are uncomfortable with that. I also think it's important to get children and teenagers, autistic teens, noticing things about others. Because when we notice things about others, it's a way of like understanding social things. And in my classroom, we do a lot of like role play. We'll do things where it's a complete disaster scene. Let's say it is a job interview scenario, coming in, putting my feet on the person's desk, and like my hair is all disheveled. And then like, what do you think this person's thoughts of me are? Like, am I making a good impression? Why or why not? What might I do differently? What do you think would make a better impression? And then sometimes going, okay, but you're interpreting it this way. So for instance, one of the scenarios that I do is it's a guy, he's covered in mud. And I just show a picture and I say, does this person make a good impression or a bad impression? They say bad. I say, well, what if he's captain of the rugby team? And just had a championship game. Like, there's so much information that goes into how we interpret and how others interpret, including us. So becoming more aware of how different cues work together can help us to interpret and problem solve a response. Um, and even watching movies together. You can watch movies, especially in teen movies or the same age, like age group, and ask questions. What do you think he means? Does he mean what he says? How can you tell? How is that person feeling? What do you think they're going to do next? And that also gives you a sense of what they are attending to and how they are making meaning, and then you can draw attention to other details as well, potentially, and build that understanding that there's no fixed way, as Seth also said too, like sometimes it's okay to interrupt people, like, but we will hear one rule and then think that applies to everything, but that's not true. We always have to teach with nuance and talk about the nuance, because if we just teach never interrupt, we're actually discounting like 50% of interactions. We're teaching them the wrong thing.
Mhm. This is incredible feedback. Thank you to both of you for being here today. That was actually our final question. I appreciate your honesty, your candidness, your transparency, your suggestions, ideas. It's really incredible to hear. It's fun to have a new face to the speaker series. So Seth, thank you for bringing in a lot of you know, fun facts about your family and about yourself, and for really, sharing your experiences with us. And Kara, as always, you are just so incredible. So thank you so much for being here today. Should anyone seeking, or if they have questions or they're looking to possibly submit any questions for our next speaker series, they're invited to email us at info@autismcanada.org. You can also reach Kara directly through her website, I imagine, yes.
Mhm.
Or Kara, your website or your email would be what?
Kara@autismlens.ca.
Perfect. And then we have Seth. Seth, how can you be reached?
I can be reached at seth@autismcanada.org.
Perfect. Thank you both for being here today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care,
You
everyone.
too.
Bye.